Okay, well, I must say, first of all, it's definitely an honor to be in your presence, Dr. Blair.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. Why it's an honor, I don't know, but I appreciate you giving me that kind of compliment.
Well, I know that,
Yeah.
you've been at this so long.
Been at it a little while, 50 years, man.
50 years.
50 years, yeah.
I first heard about you pretty late, probably about 2001. I was driving with a friend of mine. I was in Connecticut, and he says, "Let me take you somewhere." I had no idea where I was going, but I ended up at the West Indian Club, and it was one of the most eye-opening lectures I've ever been to. You introduced me to some ideas which I was not privy to back in Jamaica, where I'm from.
That's where my dad's from too, by the way.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, were you born there?
No, was born here, went back there, and stayed for 2.5 years. My mother wanted me to be educated in the United States rather than Jamaica. They didn't exactly agree to it, but I wound up back here.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you to explain to us and our viewers what is metaphysics, because this is not a subject matter that is readily taught in our schools.
Well, meta means above. If you're using the Greek terminology, they're not the most ancient people, but we seem to have a lot of our verbiage and tech, comes from that. Meta means above, and physics, of course, is basic again for science. So it means an above science. What I like to say is an explanatory science. It's a means of explaining things that are basic in a hyper-fluent way. At the same time, it also makes things that are basic showing that they really stem from a higher source. Because everything, I like to say, the unseen always controls the seen. And to look at it in a reverse way, like everything is, you can't see it, can't hold it, can't grab it, it doesn't exist, that's pragmatic and has nothing to do with truth. The small always controls the big, because the big is usually composed from the small. So the science of understanding, the science of comprehension, the science behind science is to me metaphysics. And I make this statement too, it gets a lot of people kind of teed off, and so, but the only real physics now is quantum physics. And you're hearing all about quanti, quantum physics. Quantum physics is metaphysics. And that's what they finally had to come back to. The start of all things, what is controlling the thing, what is the responsibility of things, and that is metaphysics.
Well, how would you relate metaphysics to holistic healing and medicine?
I think it's part of it. Metaphysics is a broad term. That's why some people say, "You're a master." I said, don't even sneak and say that word, because masters might get very angry. No one masters metaphysics in one lifetime. It's just too many. And part of that is holistic living. What we're finding out now in holistic living is that the things that are natural, they say, are whole and listically whole. It means by that they are listed in a whole quantum. They have life force. They have life source. Things that are artificial, synthetic, is what we've gotten used to now. We've got everything, they have everything genetically modified. I say they, because these are the powers that now are ruining our earth as far as I'm concerned. They've got pharmaceuticals, they've got synthetic this, they got genetically modification. When you have a whole thing, it has life source in it. It has seeds in it. It can regerminate, come in each time. And if you take in something that has life, it potentially give you life.
True.
If you can process and digest it. But if you think of something that has death or no life, it takes energy from you. So really, it's death food, which is unholistic, versus life-giving things, which are holistic. And I'm definitely for the holistic. I think this genetic we could talk for centuries.
I know.
Genetic modification is a horrible thing.
Terrible.
And now they've genetically modified everything, especially vegetables, tomatoes, and
fruits, and even the islands, they are importing this stuff. They have the lush vegetation and the tropical climate, and they are importing seedless grape and carrots that are genetically modified by Monsanto. So it has become a mission for me to bring this message out, because I can't fully comprehend how our people are being so naive.
When you said that, when I first heard that, when I first saw that, I think that was about 91, 92. I was down in some of the islands again. I was in this Mediterranean area. Not Mediterranean, the St. Croix, St. Thomas, all through there. I saw actually imported stuff called food, and here's an island with mangoes and papayas and turmeric. I said, what in the world? That is this whole pharmaceutical industry, big pharma, taking over the whole planet.
Right.
Making paradise into, I call it hell. Because we had everything in paradise. Now they're getting everything genetically modified. And when I was told too that the farmers had to buy, under penalty of big financial penalties again, terminated food that comes up one time, no seeds, so it doesn't come up again. And now that's what's being served every watermelon, no seeds. Cantaloupes, no seeds. I said watermelon, honeydew, no seeds. This is killing. It's not only wrong, it's killing people because they cannot get what the body needs to reproduce itself.
Right, right. Yeah, so how is this related to all these diseases like cancer and all the various, we could list them? How is genetic foods related to diseases?
Diseases is dis-ease, away from easement.
Right.
It is things that can make you sick. So they even have nowadays, I did a lecture a couple of days ago, and what you're even talking about, they even have now, how can I put, electronic diseases broadcast through the air where they take a wavelength from a germ or bacteria, amplify it, put it on a machine and broadcast it through the air, so you don't even have to have the germ itself.
Right.
You're now getting the germs broadcast, which makes you diseased, so now you can get disease from electronic. They even call it now electronic diseases. That is madness.
So you are saying
that is madness.
There are people working hard at distributing diseases.
That's right.
That is their job.
That's their profession. Because the job, I would hope a person wouldn't want a job doing that. The professional would do it and then hire people maybe to do it. The thing is, why would they do that?
That's what my
and this is where this is where we could really go off on the deep end. I'd say that there are creatures here, non-soul creatures, or people who then, because of the wealth of the non-soul creatures, because they don't care what they do to make the money, and even print the money themselves, then they hire people to carry out their ends. And I think they want control of a planet. You didn't know you were going to go this deep, did you? I think that this planet has been under their control for some time, and now that the planet is about to ascend, go to a higher vibration, they're scared stiff, so they're going to stop people from being able to reproduce. You see, when you're taking that kind of food, you cannot reproduce well. It works on the sex organ, it works on mentally, it works on spiritually, it works on germination of seed. It's just a mess. And I think it's because they want to control the population. They don't want people, especially melanated people, and I'm going to get prejudice on this, not prejudice by race, but melanated people have a sense of metaphysical being. They're more spiritual in that sense. Melanin itself. And black holes is a dark matter. It's from chlorophyll. Black holes are discovered. And I think now that people are populating, people that are mixed are populating, and like mad. Whereas people who are not mixed are not populating as well. I think that they want to curtail the production of melanated children. I think they want to curtail the production of people with spiritual souls. I think they want to curtail everything that's going to lead to the spiritual ascent of this planet, because as the planet ascends, like I'm told it will, and like I understand it to be, to the fifth dimension, they are fourth dimensional. They won't be able to stay on the planet, and toward that end, they'd rather see it destroyed before they have to leave. And really, that's the synopsis of what I think is really going on behind most of these things. These wars, these rumors of wars, these earthquakes in diverse places, these animals not producing their young, these all these things we see now. Again, flowers blooming out of season, can't tell winter from summer. All these are fulfillments, and this is all happening. I think this last thing now with Japan is the crux. It's the sine qua non. It is it. Because Japan, you watch this, Japan, the people in Japan are going to have to migrate to new lands. They cannot stay there. And once you migrate off a land that has been used to a populace, it's just when the waters will soon come and just overflow that area. I think within the next 10 years there'll be no Japan, and Japanese people themselves and people living there will have to migrate. But what's interesting about that, getting into a financial realm, we're all over the place tonight, I can see that. But what's interesting about that is Japan pretty much owns the United States anyway.
There is something I understood about a debt which the United States owed Japan, which was to be paid, like right within the timing of that earthquake. What do you think about that?
Well, I heard that now Japan is a debtor nation. The United States has been a debtor nation now since 1936. you know, under Roosevelt. So now the monies that were owed, of course, and the bonds that were owed and some kind of this, the debt's now due because now Japan is a debtor. It will cost trillions to rebuild Japan, and it's no need to even trying because now that radiation cloud, they don't even know what the half-life is. You couple that with the X-class flares coming from the sun, nobody's going to be able to live there. They're now moving 250 miles away from that meltdown that's there. How far can you go in Japan? It's just a group of islands, okay? Right. So I say again, the Japanese people will have to be leaving. They've already bought property here in the United States, in southern areas again. They bought property, I understand, in Australia. Now, if they claim that property, isn't that going to be interesting? Because we now have Latinos coming from the south. They stopped the Canadians from coming over, but some Canadians did. Now we will even have some Japanese people coming over here. The United States has been a hodgepodge of races anyway. We're really going to be a hodgepodge of races now. So I'm saying again, we're seeing such tremendous change. I don't know in any recent history, going back the last, I'd say 3,000 or 4,000 years, when anything like this has happened before.
Okay, so all right, I know that our audience, as soon as we speak in this context, it clicks in the brain, the end of the world. I want you to break this term down metaphysically.
Well, you know, people are talking about the so-called prophecies being fulfilled from the Mayans. And I call them Mayans. I noticed they've been calling them Mayans, so I guess they know what they're called, but I was taught in school Mayans. And the people that they're saying are fulfilling Mayan prophecies are the lands on which now we see a lot of tsunamis happening, a lot of earthquakes happening, a lot of things like this happening. But I also make the statement too, now who people in Belize now and where the Mayan culture is still indigenous, and so don't get angry, I don't think it was Mayan prophecies. Because the Mayans' prophecy calendar started 3,000, I think it's 3,133 or 3,000, something like that. There were no Mayans known by Mayans at that time. So that calendar could not have been started with them. I think it was the Olmecs. Later on, well, that's not even their name either. Olmecs means rubber people. I think they're the Altmans, and they had another name that I think has gotten lost in history. But you see these Olmec heads, calling them with the vernacular say, all throughout South America, Tiwanaku, Cholula, Uxmal, Chichen Itza, Stonehenge, you see them in Angkor, Thorvat, Cambodia, you see them in parts of Africa. Everywhere you see these Negroid-looking heads. Well, I've asked people, why and who were these people? If they're even in Angkor Wat and in Cambodia, they have caves looking like you're walking into the mouth of a Negroid-looking man, wide open. Who carved those caves? Who now, since they're filled with tundra and desert, and plants and stuff, that means they're hoary with age, they're antiquitous, per se. Who built them? And why all these heads everywhere and nobody knows their name, but they can talk about Mayans, but don't know anything about the people that built them? None of those people built those things. So I think, again, these were the people that were not just agronomists, they were historians, they were astronomers, they're the ones that you see just building. How did they teach them to carve a mountain back 3,000 years ago? I think many thousand years ago. So this is where I think our calendars has come from. This is what I think has been hidden antiquitously, because the battle that was fought by these people, which I think even saved the earth, and though we're not going to go there, had caused a lot of different things. When the moon first came in, I think that for certain reasons people don't want you to understand that history. And to include the history of those people is to include ancient history, making that our earth has had races on it thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, I say even millions of years. And this opens up a can of worms that they don't want you to go to. That's why they're finding paleological findings. They hide them when they find something that doesn't fit, they put it in a warehouse. You've seen some of those movies? Right. And there's so many things don't fit. They have seen femur bones, not from a mastodon, but from seeing a bipedal person 20 feet long. 20 feet long. Can you imagine if a femur bone was 20 feet long, what the creature had to look like? How many miles a day might have been tall? They're finding little midgets whole. They found them they found it in Italy. They found them also down in another place down in South America. They found them. They found them in the Colorado area, in the Colorado, the Grand Canyon, all through there. Little people, perfectly formed, 3 and 4 inches long in a esophagus. We don't begin to understand our planet. And I think if we start being truthful and not being historical freaks and making his story and everything that's real a mystery, we begin to understand that there's a lot of things going on. And I think the termination and ascendancy, terminating one era, opening up another, is upon us. I think we're going to that fifth dimension, and this is why that veil of ignorance is being lifted. The veil of Maya is gone. People are waking up. People are asking real questions. They don't want trite answers for children because the children of the gods are awakening back.
Oh, you think this is going to affect education in general? You think the whole education system has to be revised? You know, with so many things going on, challenging contemporary thought. How do you think we would have to approach educating our children, both religiously and secularly?
Hopefully, they would become one, because spirituality does not divide into religion and truth. It divides truth with spirituality, which gives you religion, in the sense that everybody wants it. What really has happened? If we only had the religion that the spiritual people of earth used to write and talk about, we wouldn't have a separation. One of the separatists is the religious community, which does not want to take anything away from Adam and Eve at a certain time and all this kind of thing, and therefore you're limiting what you're finding. When you can find things, they found a nail, carbon in a strata, I think it was in Gabon, that goes back 300,000 years minimum. Who needed the nail? And who made the nail, and for what purpose? In Gabon, West Africa, they're talking about, what do they call that thing? A natural, there's a word they use, I can't think of it right now. But it was in a natural reactor. Now, it means by that somebody had built a reactor, hopefully not like the ones that are melting down now, but a reactor that is giving off energy that is hundreds of thousands of years old in Gabon, West Africa, still giving off energy. Who made it? What culture did this? So if it's in what they now call West Africa, you would think it was with people that were Africans. But since Africa is a new name put up by the 10th Pope after Leo Africanus, then we got to find out what was that continent's name. How many continents don't we know the real names of? What kind of people lived on it? What did they do? And since we have seen what floods can do to hide history until you get underneath the water, underneath the muck and stuff, we don't begin to understand this planet at all. I say that all the time. That's why I got into metaphysics, because the teachings that I was getting, and I paid good money and spent a lot of time to learn lies.
Oh man.
And when I first...
a lot of our audience can relate to that.
That's why I say the whole system needs to crash. As far as the historical side goes, and as far as what we teach. We have got to start teaching truth. We have souls, I think, reincarnated in new truth. That's why already they're divesting themselves from all this stupid teaching. We're teaching people to set up a mechanistic thing that's grinding them under. If when we become part of something that is such a lie that stops us from progressing in mind, body, spirit, and soul, it's time for it to go. So I say all the old ways of teaching are being replaced anyway. When I took economics, and most of the people that took economics that I know, we had to do statistics tabulation. We didn't learn about fiscal responsibility. We didn't understand about banking systems. We didn't understand about commodities and indentures and debentures. They taught me statistics. They didn't want you to know the financial thing because that's the hub of all these civilizations. And yet when you had it, they won't give you credit for it. Now they say it didn't exist, they just invented it. This is terrible, man. It's time people woke up.
Definitely. Well, just to share, it is obvious what you're saying, you know. I just hit that nail with a hammer. It seems this system discredits people of so-called African descent. I took a trip to the New York, the King Tut exhibit. Yes, I went there and I walked in the museum, and the first thing I looked at was a black sculpture of this ancient king. He was living African person, and you know, when I walked further to the exhibit, I realized that all the television displays that they had on TV was showing a European type feature as King Tut, while the living artifact that was drawn in his lifetime was showing as a black person. And then again, they seem to disassociate Egypt from Africa.
Yes.
Even scholars in college, I mentioned to someone that Egypt is in Africa. She was like, no, it's in the Middle East. I'm saying, where is this so-called Middle East? So there's a psychological disconnect from anything creative, anything coming out of people from African descent. And I can't fully explain it, but it is obvious. You know, I read religion, you know, the Bible, the people, we do not connect with it because it is seeming like, I don't know, explain this.
Brother Collins, with pleasure. You went right where I hoped you would go, and you did go there. You know, we didn't pre-plan this at all.
Yes.
First of all, I want you to remind me to go back to the 18th dynasty, which was the exhibit you just saw.
Okay.
And let me just get into this. In part of Egypt there, which is in Africa, or whatever that continent was called before they changed the name, there is a city called Cairo. It is the main capital there, in fact, city, okay? Where they have the Great Pyramids, where they have the Sphinx, where they used to have wonderful botanical gardens and so, but when you look at the word Cairo, Cairo is Greek. The Greeks could not pronounce the K's that were there before, so that's the best thing. Cairo, Cairo, Cairo. Kahir was the name of that. And when you look up Kahir, K-A-H-I-R, it means Mars. Now we get into interesting things there, because now they found a Sphinx on Mars, okay? This of a Negroid-looking woman, 5 miles wide, 15 miles long with dreads. And they keep hiding that every time they show. They show it from an angle when they had those two opportunities. What was this other thing? These little androids they put up there running all around. When they showed all of this, they never show you the whole full spectrum of it. They say you can't see it because of distortion. The distortion is what you get because they don't want you to see the picture. You can always distort something when you don't want proof to come out. So that if that's the case, was that a Martian settlement? Why is it there then also that the Great Pyramids are there and they found pyramids now on Mars, in addition to a Sphinx? So if we take the root word, Kahir, which means Mars, then what are we saying now? Now, let's go back to the 18th dynasty. Every time the King Tut exhibit comes around, millions of people come out. I think even now thousands of people still come out. What is it about any major city in the United States or wherever it's been shown, people flock out? Why? Because there's that resonant factor that was a time when extraterrestrials and terrestrials ruled together. That's my say. People feel something there. They don't even know why they come out. There's an honor there. And what's very interesting about it is this. I think one of the curses, you know, when it was Sir Flying, I forget who it was, it wasn't Sir Flying to speak, it was some other guy that opened up the tomb and supposedly the curse came.
Yeah, Carter.
There you go. There you go. You just left there, so yeah, probably had all that right. I've forgotten. Thank you so much. What's interesting when you look at that, in the 18th dynasty, you had Akhenaten, who was a ruler, who had been a general, had been killing people and so on and so forth. He went into an area there that, well, I forget the name of this now, but it's now Singapore. It was not called that at that time. He came back with a belief in the one, Aton, the one. So people using atonement now, going back to the one and worshiping again. So when he came back, he was much more pious, much more spiritual, much more metaphysical, and he took the yoke of oppression off of his people. But when he did that, he also took the power of the priest caste back because he told his people, go direct. Go into meditation, go into prayer. You can reach the Creator because you are one from the Creator. You are descended from the Creator. That was too much. The priest didn't like that. But the people loved him, so had he done anything, had the priest done anything to kill him, they'd have been scoured, and everything else, you know. So they had to live with him for a few years, but they were always conspiring. What's interesting, whether it was Nefertiti that killed him, whether it was a plot by the priest that killed him, they wanted him dead. Interesting enough now, and this is where it gets in there, after he was poisoned and died, then came his son, King Tut. They call it Tutankhamun, okay? Now, the priest didn't like him either because King Tut was a genius and was very metaphysical. He was a seer. he was a son of these two people, if supposedly this is, if